Hey y'all, welcome back to Twin Oaks Farm in rural Southeast Ohio, USA. It's day 30 of raising the flock of broilers for the production of poultry meat. So we have 299 Cornish rock cross meat chickens here that we are raising for poultry. We're starting off the video with wanting to show you something about lighting and taking into consideration if the lighting is from sunlight and carrying some solar energy and some heat, how do the birds interact with that? So wanted to show you in this pen first of 299 Cornish rock cross meat chickens that overall, as we look through the pen, most of the birds are spread out, distributed pretty evenly throughout the pen. I'm going to try to look across there too and zoom in past that strong light. So there where it's not real strongly lit, the birds are also spaced out pretty evenly there. And so we kind of take note here, this sunlight streaming in is from a set of carriage doors on the west side of the building. And so it's September 21st, 2023. It's late in the afternoon, have a lot of sunlight streaming in from the west side of the building. And so that's creating really a hot spot in the bird's grower pen. And so we do have a bird that laid down there in the sun, but it didn't want to stay there long. And the other ones that are there, they're kind of trying to stay where it's shaded. And then you also see it kind of like triggers when they do get up and move through there, it kind of triggers a little bit of jumping and action, and they're interacting with that strong light. So we actually have a helper stationed outside the building, and Owen is our oldest son. He is going to help us by closing this door. So we want to go ahead and close this door, and we want to observe what happens. Owen, thanks for your help. We appreciate you. So we want to observe what happens when we close that up. And we might give it a few moments here to see what the birds do. But basically, it's about 82 degrees in their environment. And they really want the ambient temperature to be in the low 70s, not the low 80s. And so with that, they're already coping with more heat than they appreciate. So with that strong sunlight streaming in, it was making that area warm, and it kind of made it like a no man's land for the birds, and they wanted to avoid it. But now that first of all, strong light is shaded, and also that heat is blocked out by closing up the door, some of these birds are going to be more likely to go into that area of their grower pen. So we wanted to kind of demonstrate how the temperature and the lighting level really have a huge impact on the behavior of Cornish rock cross meat chickens and the circadian rhythm that a flock eventually does settle into in its surroundings. So, for example, back to pointing out that as we look throughout the pen, most of the birds are pretty evenly distributed throughout this grower pen. And a lot of them are laying down and resting. And that's partly indicating that they're in this resting phase of their regular pattern of activity that stems from a natural circadian rhythm that the birds have adjusted to based on their conditions. So they are also kind of resting and staying more or less quiet to deal with the temperature being a little warmer than they want to be. The natural body temperature of a chicken is about 107 degrees. And when they get to be about 3 weeks old, and these birds are a little over 4 weeks old, when they get to be about 3 weeks old, they can pretty effectively regulate from internally their own body temperature to keep it at the 107 degrees. But they do that most easily and most efficiently when the ambient temperature around them is in about the low 70s. And any variance off of that is difficult for them to cope with, and they have to do different things to try to regulate that for themselves. So like what we're seeing here, you are seeing birds that, like this one, holding its wings out away from its body, panting a little bit, and some of them are at the waters taking in water. Those are all normal chicken things to do to regulate their temperature to the 107 degrees that they need to be when the ambient temperature around them is higher than ideal. And so likewise, if it would be too cold, then they would do behaviors like huddle together and try to warm themselves up. When they're hatchlings, so even in our grower pen, up here at the top of the frame that we're recording in, we have 6 supplemental heat lamps suspended. They're each suspended from the ceiling. So like when we bring hatchlings in, they really don't have the ability to regulate their temperature at that point in their development. It takes 2 to 3 weeks for baby chicks to develop the ability to regulate their temperature. So the chicken naturally needs to be about 107 degrees, but baby chicks are only able to maintain about 103 degrees. And so that's why baby chicks up to 2 or 3 weeks old at least tend to need supplemental heat to help put extra heat in the environment so they have that external regulation to the temperature that they need to be. But by the time we get to birds 3 weeks old, or like this age, 4 weeks old, they can do that a little more on their own, and they will do these different behaviors accordingly to regulate the temperature as well and supplement their internal ability to do that. Now, we're not worried about heat stress at this point because they are coping with the coping mechanisms that chickens have. They don't sweat, but they pant, and they, try to get airflow over the unfeathered parts of their bodies. Also, we see birds voluntarily going to water and voluntarily getting up to go to feeders. That tells us the flock at large is most likely coping just fine. Now, thing about feed though, when birds are already warm, if on top of it they ingest feed, the digestion process creates heat. So that is detrimental if we're trying to cool birds down. Now these birds are indicating they're probably feeling fine with the temperature because they're up going to eat. But you can see they've eaten these trays down nearly empty. We typically do not let our birds eat the trays down that empty, and they're due to have about 100 pounds more of feed placed into their feeders, but we're waiting until the ambient temperature does cool down closer to the lower 70s before we're going to add more feed in. And they're staying calm. They're not getting anxious or upset about the feeders being low, so they'll be fine until the temperature cools, and we will get some more feed added into their pen. But there's a lot of interplay between the lighting level and the ambient temperature that impacts not only the success of a meat production flock, but also the circadian rhythm that the birds settle into. So you can tailor that to the resources you have if you are raising meat chickens as well. Thanks so much for joining us, y'all. Please subscribe. God bless you.